Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is the bye week, so we know for a fact by this point you're tired of hearing myself and Dave's voice going through airwaves. So for this week, we have very special guests coming throughout the week, and today we have Kevin Little, aka Kev, aka the Sultan of Schemes from the X's and Noles YouTube channel, coming and talk about how a team has improved from game one to game whatever it is right now, game 20 at this point, and also what happened from the first four games to the last three on today's edition of Locked On Seminoles. Let's ride.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to another edition of Locked On Seminoles. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Drake here, and not only do I have Dave in the stream yard, but like I said, at the top of the hour, we have Mr. Kevin Little of the X's and Noles YouTube channel, and his beautiful dog in the background too. Kev, what's up? What's going on, my guy?
Yeah, how's it going? Yeah, the wife's out of town, so I've got to keep the dog for the night.
You gotta do. I mean, listen, that's man's best friend right there. Trust me, I got mine kind of, put up with the way. My fiance taking care of her, but we're not here to talk about pets. This is not the dog podcast, even though Dave, write that down. It's a great idea for a future show.
Hard pivot.
A very hard pivot. But Kev, you were probably the most, I think, the only program actually out there in the FSU space where that, kind of does looks at scheming wise, looks at play calling and everything else. So one of the things that we kind of brought you on here was to educate people like myself and also Dave to see how this FSU team has grown since probably game one of the Mike Norvell era and up until now. So I kind of wanted to start right there. What have you seen basically from game one to game 20 that basically overall that this team has basically not only improved, but someone has been a consistent, competent team overall?
Yeah, so I think it all starts and stops on the offensive side of the ball with Jordan Travis. I think, he wasn't starting at first, but when he was first kind of getting game reps, you saw they were trying to be a little bit more creative. You could tell they didn't really trust him to make reads. So they were doing a lot of that triple option is kind of what I call it, but it's basically a read. They read the backside defensive end. If he pulls it, he then reads in another defender to determine if he keeps it or throws a screen. So it's a modern version of a triple option. They went to that a lot that first year. You can think back a couple years ago to the Jacksonville State game when Tate Rodemaker started and they were struggling by halftime. Jordan Travis came in. They ran that play about 20 times and just kind of wrecked them. You saw kind of over the years that's kind of changed, and Jordan Travis has developed as a passer, and they've kind of put more trust in his hands. And the passing game has really kind of evolved based off that. Norvell's always been kind of a one-read guy, no matter who the quarterback is, even back to his Memphis days. He wants to kind of be a vertical coach, so they're going to run a lot of fades, a lot of what look kind of like corner routes, the slot fade, and a lot of screens. And so you see he's kind of growing into that. He's got a strong enough arm to kind of make those throws. For the offensive line has improved, and one thing that you've seen this year they've gone to a lot more is that outside zone that they weren't able to run the past couple of years. So it was a big staple of his at Memphis to be able to run outside zone. But as you can imagine, with any outside play, you need offensive linemen that are fast enough to kind of get the edge, get the perimeter, and he really hasn't had that until this year. And over the past couple of games, you saw them go to a lot against NC State and against Clemson. So they were primarily a counter team last year and the year before, but now you're starting to be able to run some zone concepts. So that the offense is opening up for all parties as more and more talent comes into the team.
Yeah, so the development in those ways, and just generally speaking, I think is obvious to most people that watch Florida State football. If you take it more macro, more micro, not looking from game one of the Norvell era, but game one of the 2022 Florida State Seminoles, it obviously is a tale of two sections of the year so far. The first four games of the season, we were on top of the world. It seemed like Florida State was back. It was the national media saying it. I didn't necessarily say Florida State was back, but the last three games have looked quite different to a lot of people.
Looks like we're losing Dave. That's a great
Yeah.
way to say that. But I think right now, overall, Dave is asking that what is actually kind of you seen from games 1 through game 4, 4-0. So Dave, you're back?
He thought about coming back. Yeah, I
I think
can talk about that while Dave gets his internet sorted out. So game 1, Florida State, you could immediately see Jordan Travis had a lot more responsibility. If you go back and watch that LSU game, he's making a lot of checks at the line. He's kind of operating the offense. They kind of put it in his hands more so than not. So really in the modern game, you're either giving the defense different looks and adjusting to them, or you're running fast-paced offenses. So they kind of went with the former, where Jordan Travis has a lot of responsibility. He's making checks. He's changing the play at the line. And against LSU, that really worked. And you could see that they were consistently getting in the right play and kind of probably outperforming their talent level. As the season's gone on, you've kind of see them try different things. Early on, outside zone, the thing I was saying wasn't working. They were getting blown up with that, but it's really kind of come on strong these past couple of weeks. But unfortunately, Mike Norvell's offense lives and dies on the shot play, and so if you're dropping those shots, or if Jordan Travis isn't sharp on any given day, just a few of those can really hurt the offense. So I don't know if much has changed, but I think you really did see they kind of had to get creative against Clemson. They brought in some more 2-back sets. They did a little bit more motion. They got a little bit more creative with it. And I think you'll probably see a little bit more of that going forward.
Definitely we can see that overall, and that's something that now we have Dave actually back in here. Dave, he just finished up basically what your question was. So I actually do kind of want to pivot now before we actually head over the break to what we've seen as the development of Jordan Travis. You're someone that actually kind of has been breaking him down for the past 2 years. What exactly is it behind basically kind of this? Like, it wasn't even a step forward. To me personally, in the first 4 games, you saw kind of a big giant leap forward. Is it something that he's always been there, or like with Jordan, that he simply needed more time, needed the weapons on the outside? Or is there something that you can see on film that actually has made him transcend to basically what he was in the first 4 games, where he was a borderline elite quarterback?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think you definitely saw glimpses of it last season. So go back and watch that UNC film. Go back and watch Miami last year. And you saw glimpses of him being a top 15 quarterback. You saw him making these throws, using his feet. But I think what he didn't have was the ability to be a top 15 pocket passer. In order for him to open up the offense last year, he had to be moving. He had to be running. And against LSU, he really didn't have many rushing yards, but he was able to distribute the ball effectively. I do think there's a big part of that. Last year, you were unable to win any one-on-one matchups on the outside. Last year, by far, your best receiver was Ontario Wilson, maybe Malik McClain on a good day. And now both of those guys have kind of been buried. You have Johnny Wilson, you have Micah Pittman, both of which have been pretty reliable winning man coverage. And I think while Jordan Travis's evolution has been impressive, it would be foolish to deny that having more weapons and a more solid offensive line in front of him hasn't helped.
Okay, perfect. And before we actually, Dave, you got one more before the break?
No, Drake, I was just going to tell you that you were right that Jordan Travis did look elite the first 4 weeks of the season. And I want you to tell everybody about something else elite, please.
Oh, okay. Folks, that are friends over at Sweatblock. They are the title sponsor for today's show. Basically, folks, if you're listening to this on the microphone right now, you can't see me. I am a heavier set individual. So, as you might know, I'm an attorney. I wear suits and ties all day. So, your boy gets extremely sweaty. But Sweatblock was created by doctors to help with my own excessive sweating. It is a doctor created and doctor recommended. If you or someone you love, like myself, is experiencing embarrassing sweat, odor, try Sweatblock. Save 20% off with promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, at sweatblock.com. Once again, save 20% off with promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, at sweatblock.com. Folks, trust me, it works. And also, they are on Amazon.
Kevin,
okay.
We're not going to stay on the offense here forever. Drake here is not Adam Fuller's biggest fan. Him, and you've seen a lot of people over the course of the last 2.5 seasons at various times recommend firing Adam Fuller. The defense has been the strength of this team throughout Mike Norvell's tenure. And I think to this point in the season, injuries notwithstanding, think it's probably disappointed relative to the top 25 expectations that a lot of some people had. What are you seeing in the defense this year that has unimpressed you, and what are you seeing that has exceeded your expectations?
So this season kind of took an interesting turn in terms of how they played defense. So Fuller's always been a cover 4 guy. He was a cover 4 guy when he was before his time at Memphis. He was a cover 4 guy at Memphis. He was a cover 4 guy the past couple seasons here. You've seen Florida State move to a lot more man coverage, keep 2 safeties over the top. And a lot of that has to do with, I think they really don't trust their corners. And I think that there's a real concern about leaving those corners on islands. And you've seen Florida State typically keeps two safeties over the top, kind of in a more conservative shell in order to protect those corners. But that also means that you're taking guys out of the run fits. And so that's why you see this kind of defense that's kind of bend, don't break kind of style this season. It's been like a large faction of people that are really critical of it. And it is what it is. I think he's doing a good job of addressing their weaknesses, but I think the concern is that like in a cover 4 scheme and a zone scheme, it means those safeties get to play close to the line of scrimmage. So that means that you get to have Jamie Robinson and Akeem Dent kind of being more of a presence in the run game. Both of them are more box safeties than they are true coverage safeties. So I think the fact that you're covering up your weaknesses means that you're also more vulnerable, or I guess you're not utilizing your strengths necessarily to their fullest potential. So it's one of those things where everything in football, as soon as you give something away, you get something, and you can never have anything for free. So it's a tough call, and that's just what they've run with this season.
Yeah, I'm about to say, I think one of the biggest things that we've seen overall is the defensive back room, basically from corners. You see also with Akeem Dent, honestly, Akeem Dent the past 2 games minus NC State has been basically regressing poorly. And then you see Amari Cooper, who I'm not 100% sure he's fully healthy. But then you see Kevin Knowles. I think Kevin Knowles' season's very, I guess, you can sum it down to one play, and it's the missed sack on DJU, because that's basically been since game 1. But how much of it is basically the defensive line since Fabian Level went down struggling to get home? Because that also could be basically, it's not helping your corners, and quite frankly, there's enough plays to point that out to as well. But how much is the defensive line's, I guess, lack of pure production kind of hurting the rest of the team?
Yeah, so you could tell they were banking on the defensive line to be that they could keep those safeties back and be a little bit more conservative, because they felt like they could trust their defensive line. So really having Burst come in and out of games, losing Fabian Lovett, having Robert Cooper kind of being in and out has really meant that risk you took of being more conservative isn't paying off, because, well, now you can't really trust your defensive line to win one-on-ones, and you can't trust your secondary to win one-on-ones. So where do you turn to? And so I think that hopefully you get Lovett back here soon, and hopefully that the style of defense they're playing makes a little bit more sense with him in the game. I think it did against LSU, but we'll kind of see how that goes moving forward.
Yeah, obviously we're going to get some guys healthier, if not necessarily back from injury after the bye week. Probably couldn't be a better time for it. Kevin, if there's anything that you would like to see happen on this defense other than everybody magically become healthy, is there anything schematically you would like to see this defense doing differently the final 5 games of the season that they're capable of doing?
Yeah, so I mean, my answer is always going to be schematic, because that's kind of how I see the game of football. But yeah, I'd like to see him to go back to a little bit more cover 4. I think Jamie Robinson and Akeem Dent really shined there. I think you're right that they've kind of disappeared. I'd like to see them kind of play more heavy nickel. So that's taking someone like Kevin Knowles out of the game, who's more of a coverage nickel, and putting someone more like Shaheem Brown or Jamie Robinson down in that role, be more of a box presence. I'd like to see them be a little bit more physical on that side of the ball. And, if you give up a shot play, you just don't have many quarterbacks left on the schedule that you're really worried about beating you over the top. I mean, you have Jeff Sims, you have Anthony Richardson, who's got an arm, but not terribly accurate. Tyler Van Dyke is really the only guy that's a threat to hurt you, and he doesn't have any weapons on the outside. So, yeah, I'd like to see them be a little bit more aggressive. And you've seen them kind of do that. They've blitzed more against Clemson, against NC State than they had early on in the season once they kind of figured out that their backups at defensive line wasn't going to hold the fort for them. But with that always comes, there have been more chunk plays against Clemson than you saw against anybody else. And so, yeah, I'd like to see them a little bit more aggressive, but also I'd like to see them healthy and see what their real peak is as a defense.
Okay, because I know that basically I've seen you and Coach AB. I know one thing Coach AB likes is kind of his criticism for Adam Fuller is that you have these longer ranger corners. Basically, why are they playing so far off all their men? So I actually liked you bringing that up. And then you also brought up Jeff Sims and Anthony Richardson. One thing that we've seen that actually with this Adam Fuller defense, he's been at FSU, is that they do struggle with more athletic quarterbacks. And basically, we have right now Jeff Sims, and then you have Garrett Schrader, who somehow now knows how to throw the ball, which is crazy to me.
Yeah,
but
they've got an elite offensive coordinator there.
Yeah, the Virginia OC who made Brent Armstrong look like a monster. Yeah,
yep.
That guy's really good at his job. So then what is exactly can you pinpoint to Prima being a weak, the reason why, for some reason, I think Dave has coined the term as that we have every single player has their new Heisman campaign if they're a dual threat QB against us. So what exactly is basically the primary reason behind that? And then how do you basically scheme around kind of limiting that kind of damage?
So, early on in the season, so I would have argued preseason. So watching the games last season, I would have argued that a lot of the reasons Florida State struggled against mobile quarterbacks is because they didn't have mobile linebackers. You had Kalen DeLoach, who kind of came out of his shell late in the season. But before that, you were having to play DJ Lundy at 250 pounds and Amari Gaynor, who, in my opinion, is more of an edge rusher than he is a linebacker. And so you're playing both those guys at linebacker. So that makes it tough. But then you show up this season and you kind of have let Malik Cunningham have a day. Jaden Daniels has a few big runs that kind of springs things open for LSU. And you wonder if this theme has kind of continued. And I think they did a little bit better against DJ last game. They were a little bit more aggressive. I thought early they were a little too trusting in their defensive line against those quarterbacks. And I thought that you saw Malik Cunningham kind of eat them up. I think they have to be more aggressive. Honestly, if they're not, I'm going to be right there on front of the Fire Fuller train, just like everybody else. I've been probably one of his biggest supporters so far, but if you're not more aggressive, if you're trying to spy like Garrett Schrader with Derek McClendon, then I've got a problem with that. Bring a safety down, have Jamie Robinson be that guy that's going to stop their quarterback at any costs. Don't ask, Tatum Bethune or Derek McClendon to trail a guy that's running a 4.7, 4.6. So yeah, I think you're going to have to see some schematic changes because otherwise, yeah, you're right. These are teams that probably do match up well offensively against Florida State, who has not looked good against mobile quarterbacks in years.
Drake, speaking of matchup, what are our listeners going to match up well with?
Well, folks, whether it's your small business or you're looking for a new job, you always need to go over to LinkedIn Jobs, LinkedIn Talent Solutions. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. Best qualified candidates? Look at the Kev down here. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Dave, you used them before, right?
I have. I've posted a couple job listings now on LinkedIn. It is very easy to do. You do get quality candidates. Everybody's on LinkedIn these days. There is no easier place to post a job. And like it says here in the top right, it is free. And that is always nice.
It's for the free, folks. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster than ever before. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free, and for the free. And as always, folks, terms and conditions may apply. All right, Kev, we're in the home stretch now. Basically, this is where we get more of the personal questions, learn a little more about you as the FSU fan. Before we do that, I do want to ask you your expectations heading into the last 5 games of the season. I know you're going to be breaking down a lot more film on your X's and Noles channel with Coach AB and Trey Roll and that scumbag. But overall, what are your expectations actually for this team heading into the last 5?
Yeah, so this is the stretch where Mike Norvell really has to earn his money, right? So you look at the past 3 games, you can be disappointed that they lost to NC State. But realistically, going into the year, we thought Wake Forest, NC State, and Clemson were all better football teams in this one. When we're doing our win expectations, you had 7-8 wins for a reason, and it's because ACC Atlantic is a slaughterhouse. The back half of the season is kind of weird because it's not what we expected preseason. We expected Miami to not be a complete dumpster fire, or most people did. We expected Florida to, I don't know. I didn't expect much from Florida, but Syracuse was not expected to be this good. Jury's still out on if they're good or if they're just kind of beat up on a NC State team. They got a lot of luck going their way in that first game against Louisville. So, but Florida State hasn't gotten that luck. I think Florida State needs to win 3. 3's the magic number of, if you win less than 3, there's a lot of people who are very upset at Mike Norvell. Like that is the baseline, what you need to be able to accomplish. And frankly, the advanced numbers have you winning 3. So I think you can win all 5, and I think you should be able to win 4 out of 5. If I'm being honest, I'm disappointed if you only win 3. But realistically, I think that the Louisiana game isn't as much of a gimme as we thought. Georgia Tech's looking better. Miami's a rivalry game at Miami. So these are games that if you make the kind of mistakes you made against Clemson or NC State, you can lose on any given Saturday. And because you lost against NC State, because you lost against Wake Forest and Clemson, you now have very little wiggle room to kind of mess up.
Yeah, so that NC State game overall, like, kind of just is the main reason why I think most of the fan base is upset. Because I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm still projecting my anger from that game on the Clemson game. Even though if you watch the Clemson game, you're like, oh, yeah, you know what? They're the better team.
Yep.
Yeah, Kevin, I want to test that actually. I want to test what comes first to you, the analytics or the fan inside of you. So, 2 questions here. 1, does the way the season started and the way it's gone the last 3 games impact what you find to be acceptable for the rest of the season? In other words, you start 4-0, a scenario where you don't win 8 games feels a bit more preposterous. So my first question is, A, does that change anything for you the way the season started relative to your expectations the last 5? And B, does it matter to you if those 2 losses are to Florida and Miami?
To be honest, I think that Miami's a bad football team. So that upsets me more than losing to a rival. But I think that, I think he'd be foolish. I think that's why most people are upset, right? Like if you lost to LSU and beat NC State, if you kind of make that swap right now, most people aren't terribly upset about where this team is. But because it's 3 straight, you imagine, well, we could lose to anybody at this point in time. So yeah, I think the bias is there. The frustration is there, but I think realistically, if you can get out of this season with 8 wins, I think we're all going to be lukewarm about 7 wins preseason, but I'm still looking at 8 wins. I was looking at 9 before this 3-game stretch. That's had to go down a little bit. There is disappointment, but I don't know. I have to be excited about the growth and kind of the schedule outlook for next season if you're able to kind of finish this with 8 wins and get a top 15, 20 recruiting class.
What is the schedule for next season? Like, as I know we had a murderer's row these past 3 games.
And Bama is at LSU.
And we opened with LSU. I know we're in Orlando. I think. I'm trying to think what we draw from that. But overall, I mean, I'm right there with you. Like David asked me that earlier in this week, and I kind of stated that's more. If we went 3-1 and then actually had one more win against NC State and we were 4-3, I'm like, you know what? I probably would have been a lot more okay with that. But then the fact, like you're saying, you start off 4-0 and then you lose those 3 games in the manner that you did, it definitely does leave a kind of sour taste in your mouth. And now also, I think Trey said when y'all were on for 247, basically the margin of error now is so much more thinner and smaller, especially because, like you're saying, and Dave is the biggest Miami hater you can find, besides probably yourself and Brendan, that Miami is not a very good football team, and neither is Florida. So losing to one of those 2, quite frankly, to me, is less likely to happen than you losing Syracuse. Because Syracuse, to me, I think actually is a very sneakily good team.
Yep. especially in the Carrier Dome.
Oh, no, it's the JMA Wireless Dome now. Remember, now
Oh,
it's the
okay.
wireless
Yeah.
dome with no Wi-Fi. No AC when it was an AC company, and now it's no wireless when they have no Wi-Fi.
You
But
gotta love it.
let's not go more to the personal side of things. You've already said your hatred basically about Miami. I did kind of want to ask you this. We ask this for every first-time guest that comes on here. Which team would you prefer to beat more and why? Florida or Miami?
Oh man. As a fan, I have a little respect for Florida. There's like something there where it's like, if they run through the SEC while we're good, I'm okay with that. But Miami, the water's rising under their feet. It's not going to make me too sad.
Yeah, they talk they talk an awful lot for a school that's never won the ACC. So at least Florida's won some stuff. At least they have something to talk about.
You put some respect on that All Canes conference.
Yeah,
All
right, exactly.
Canes conference, Jesus Christ. And then also, I did want to ask you that I know we talked about Jordan Travis basically being as a QB. Now he's been from a lot of people were saying he was bottom 5 heading into the year. Spoiler alert, I was one of those people, along with a bunch of other media outlets. I kind of want to ask your opinion on the other QBs in the conference. Dave can already tell you that basically he has never been a believer in TBD. So overall, we've been calling the ACC as the conference of quarterbacks and conference of quarterbacks for the past 2 seasons. What do you make of the QBs in the conference overall? Like, where would you kind of put them in the pecking order?
Yeah, so a lot's changed this year, hasn't it? It's been kind of a weird season where preseason I would have been like, well, you got Devin Leary and Brennan Armstrong and XYZ, but you shift some offensive coordinators around and you start to see a different picture. I think if we're talking college quarterbacks, I take Sam Hartman, and I probably take a Malik Cunningham if he's still healthy. I take after that. I'm probably leaning into the Devin Leary, DJ, Jordan Travis kind of area. I'd probably put those in a very similar space. At this point this season, probably wouldn't have last season. I thought DJ was the second worst quarterback in the conference last season.
He was bad.
He was really bad, but he's looked really solid this year. Of course, it helps to play on Clemson and have better athletes at every position than the teams you play every week. So that's why I don't have him as high as many people would. You've got to just prove it more when you play for a Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State. So yeah, I'd kind of put Jordan Travis in that like middle, like 3 to 5 area with Devin Leary and DJ, but I think they're a little bit below where Sam Hartman and Malik Cunningham kind of can be for you.
Yeah, not to
I
mention
love how you don't mention TVD at all.
Oh, TVD. Yeah. So TVD was a product of Rhett Lashley being a genuinely good offensive coordinator, and making life easy for quarterbacks. I think he's talented. I think can be a decent quarterback, but I also think they run an offensive system that was outdated when I was playing football in 2006, so, I think he's got talent. I think he's got arm strength. I think that I wouldn't trade him for Jordan Travis.
Yeah, and you didn't even mention UNC striking gold twice.
Oh
Drake
man,
May.
I forgot about Drake May. Drake May is also a product of a system in some ways. Look, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. My favorite offensive coordinator in the country is Phil Longo at North Carolina, and I think he's an incredible offensive coordinator. And I think UNC would be a top 10 team if they had a pulse on the defensive side of the ball. I think Drake May is incredibly talented, and I think that he probably goes up there. It's hard to rank all these guys because I also forgot Garrett Schrader, who's looked like a stud this year. And so it's like, yeah, I'd probably put both of those quarterbacks in that little mix where it's just I don't see much separation between Drake May, Jordan Travis, whatever. But I also think if you put Drake May on Miami, he wouldn't look the way he looks.
Yeah, nobody looks good on Miami. That's just a fact in the colors or otherwise. My question would be 3 weeks ago, was that a different conversation? Was Jordan Travis in a different tier to you 3 weeks ago? Has that changed at all?
Yeah, he was, and DJ was lower and Schrader was lower and Drake May was where Drake May is. It's hard to get a feel for him. They haven't really played anybody that's really worth anything. And that offense is just super efficient, super easy to run. Yeah, I think he was maybe not in the sense that I think he's gotten a lot worse, but it did seem like he was remarkably consistent through those first 4 games, and he's kind of dropped off. I think to me, the plays that really stand out were like those 2 fade routes that just were kind of poorly thrown on the goal line against Clemson. And it's just like, it doesn't feel like he missed those at the beginning of the season. I don't really know what's going on there, but I think he currently is a little bit below. But I'd still put him as a top 25 quarterback in the country. That's kind of how the ACC is this year.
Well, Kevin, Jordan is a top 25 quarterback, but you're a number 1 top 5 guest for coming on here today. Please, folks, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on today, but also let the folks know where they can follow you, go all your work, and basically support you from, living in your squalor, because I do know you have a Patreon.
Yeah, so yeah, I do have a Patreon, but check out X's and Noles. So that's the YouTube channel that I kind of started a few years back, kind of out of I missed coaching. I was out of it for a second, and so I kind of started up the channel. I was up in Georgia for a minute, so I kind of missed that. Nothing major, but yeah. So find me on X's and Noles. We do a lot of film breakdown, not a ton of just podcasts, but if you want to kind of see what I'm talking about in action, you can watch basically any video I've got up there. We try to sit down and kind of explain the nuts and bolts of what's happening.
Yeah, you're not going to find a better place to tell you what your eyes are not telling you or not seeing correctly. To find our podcast, Drake, you can find us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Google Play, anywhere you get your podcast. Isn't that right?
You can, and also please don't forget to like this video, hit the subscribe button at the tippy top, and ding the little bell so you know when new content drops. And folks, please go like, share, subscribe, and do everything you can to help out X's and Noles, because that is the one-stop shop, the only premier Seminole outlet that actually does do extensive film breakdowns. They even tried a new sort of method and sort of a, I guess, content this week with the Sports Center highlights, and that actually was something that was actually extremely interesting. And folks, please check it out. There's no one does it better when it comes to scheming and X's and O's than the folks over at X's and Noles. But for myself, Drake, that was Kev, and that was Dave, and we'll see y'all next time on Locked On Seminoles. Take care, everybody. Win the bye week.